Hey adventurers, so today is going to be another book review. This is going to be for Grail by Stephen R. Lawhead. This is, of course, an Arthurian, historical fantasy, religious, basically all the same genre, subgenres, and keywords that I've been using for the rest of this series. By the way, I am T, just trying to get back into the habit of introducing myself at the beginning of videos. So, Grail is book 5 of the Pendragon Cycle by Stephen R. Lawhead, and is the final book in this series. Or at least chronologically the last book in the series, and until January of this year, it was the final book released as well. Aurelia has now been released, but that is once again more pre-Arthur, and so again, still chronologically, this is the final book in the series. But there is also another book called Avalon, The Return of King Arthur that's by Lawhead. That is somewhat related to this series, but most don't really consider it as officially part of the series, though it was kind of, from what I understand, it was kind of meant to fulfill that once and future king aspect of the character. However, I have yet to read either Aurelia or Avalon, and so those ones I'm completely setting aside at the moment because I haven't read them and I don't know when I will. I would like to read Aurelia soon so that I can have that story in my mind for the series, and especially with the TV series coming, I hope I kind of hope that that incorporates Aurelia to some degree, but also that it doesn't, because I haven't read it and I don't want that to be spoiled for me. But I'm waiting for an audiobook because that's how I'll get to it quicker. I may end up just picking up the physical book and trying to get through that at some point, or the ebook, maybe I might do that. But it's not going to be at the moment. I'm going to wait until there is an audiobook for me to listen to. Before I get into the main body of this review, though, I'd just quickly like to say, if you're liking what you're seeing from an Erudite adventure, please like, comment, and subscribe. Alright, so Grail is a very interesting book to me, for a lot of reasons, actually. I've always rather enjoyed the Grail quest in Arthurian literature, but there is, at the same time, something exceedingly strange about it. There's something about it that I have a very hard time explaining. And I don't know, I talked a little bit about this in my review, or in October wrap-up when I talk about Grail. I've talked about it in my video on, well, probably all of my videos on my adventure through Arthurian Lit, which you can go check those out. I should have my Arthurian playlist linked, and those videos should be in the playlist. Also, there should be a part 3 to that coming out either before or after this video very, very soon, the same week of, or the week prior to this video that goes up. But anyways, as well as my review of Once and Future King, if I didn't mention that. I talk a little bit about the idea of the Grail quest. Maybe I do it in my review. If I did a review of Le Morte d'Arthur, I probably talked about it in there as well. But basically, it's something that I talk about a lot in regards to King Arthur stories and the Grail quest. And it's very hard for me to explain what it is that I actually feel about the Grail quest. Because I love the storyline, I love the characters, the main players of this storyline, especially the traditional ones being Galahad, Bors, and Percival. Those 3 characters are characters that I really enjoy reading. And so the way that they factor into this storyline, I often really, really appreciate, really love their entries, their portrayals during this storyline. And so there's a lot about this storyline that I always actually really enjoy, but there's also like a wrongness to the entire story as each time I read about it. There's something about this realm of Arthur that, after years of strife and battle, has finally grown and become something great, something pure, and a light in the world of darkness, only for them to begin the quest for the Holy Grail, something holy, as is in its name, and through it signal the collapse of the realm. There's so much darkness in a tale of so much light. Characters are lost, relationships are destroyed, and all of it is in search of something that they cannot truly obtain. Classically, when Galahad achieves the Grail, he gets taken off Earth. He gets taken to heaven. There is no more Galahad after that, basically. And so there's this idea of the Holy Grail being something that could be obtained for Arthur's court as a trophy. That in and of itself, the idea of trying to claim the Holy Grail as a trophy, that's part of the problem with this storyline, and it's acknowledged in the story. In these each of the versions of the story is, should we even be doing this? Why are we doing it? Is it just to have a trophy of it? Is it a lot of times they say no, it's for its protection, there's people who would try and take it, and all sorts of stuff like that. But all of it comes together to create a very wrong feeling of these stories. There's something wrong with whatever is going on. It feels, there's often also a lot of very apocalyptic feeling to this, or it feels like the end of the world in a lot of ways during the Grail quest. And it's leading to the fall of this kingdom. It's leading very, very directly. You place the Grail quest right before the end of Arthur's reign for a reason. And yeah, let's continue on here. Of course, we know that the quest is achieved at the end, but the ending of the quest is really not what is important about the quest. What is important is the quest itself and what it reveals about our characters. And that can be hard to read at times. That can be, when you read it, especially in Le Morte d'Arthur, because they spend a good chunk of time on the Grail quest. When you read about the Grail quest and you read about the characters that go on this quest, and you know their history, and you know who the characters are and how they think and the type of decisions that they make, and then they go on this Grail quest, and they're bound to fail. They're guaranteed to fail from the moment they swear to seek the Grail. And it's hard to read. It's disheartening. It's discouraging to go read these stories about these characters who you've grown to love, and you've seen them grow through their failings over and over and over again. And yet, this time, their failings are the very thing that keep them from achieving it. They cannot grow past them at this point. And it's hard. It's hard to read, and it's good. It actually causes a lot of self-reflection when you read the stories. But let's continue. I really don't want to ramble too much about it. That is true of all versions of the Grail quest that I've read. The three primary ones being Le Morte d'Arthur, the Once and Future King, and then now Grail. Those are three big versions of the Grail quest that I have read. I have read others, but they basically end up saying the same thing. So it's true of all versions of the Grail quest, but in this cycle of the myth, while all that remains true, it feels particularly weird because if you've read the previous books before it, you already know what's going to happen to each of the characters, and that's a failing, I would say, of the series. Not totally due to not totally the fault of Lawhead, but it is just part of what happens if you read the books 1 through 3, 4, 5 rather than 1, 2, first part of 3, 4, second part of 3, 5, third part of 3. If you do it that way, then I'm sure you could get the story correctly, but Grail takes place in between parts 2 and part 3 of book 3, Arthur, and so you know what happens already. You know the ending. You know the characters that are still around or that have died or whatever it is, and so you read them in Grail, and there's very, very few stakes. Let's continue through here so that I am not getting ahead of myself. You know who survives and who does not, and so in many ways, this feels almost like a pointless read. And the stakes feel so low, and you're in constant state of disbelief throughout the entire story because you know it doesn't match what happened in the previous books. It's a bit less impactful because of that. I feel like the Grail quest is supposed to hit really hard, and it would if you didn't have the impact. It would be more impactful had you not read the last section of the last part of Arthur. It's a bit less impactful because of that. However, the corruption and betrayal of our characters creates for some very good storytelling. This is also a very magical book, possibly the most magical of the series, with the exception of maybe Merlin. I'm not sure between the two which one is more magical in the sense of has magic in it. But it's either Merlin or Grail. They're both very magical in different ways, admittedly. Merlin has a lot more of the druidic magic, whereas this is very much holy magic, if you want to say it that way. as well as corrupt dark magic. Morgan is a hugely important character in this book, as is normal with Arthurian myths and with the Grail quest. I mentioned in my review of Pendragon that some of the aspects of this book are stronger and some are weaker, and really what it is the fact that we know how this story ends. Whereas with Pendragon, they were largely events that were not referenced in Arthur, so with this one, we have a hard time viewing it independently from the rest of what came before. Pendragon, you were able to separate it a little bit, because it was just like, okay, here's another story set during this time that you don't know, but it helps to flesh out the world. Whereas Grail is, you already know what happens towards the end of this timeline, and since the Grail quest plays directly and leads directly into the ending of the fall of Camelot, it's hard to say that it's not that you don't understand what's going on, or that you know that you don't know the ending of the Grail quest, because you do. And so because of that, it's hard to view Grail independently from the rest of the series and just look at the story itself. If you could place it into its chronological location, that would actually be really helpful. Overall, though, I did greatly enjoy the book, and I always enjoy, as well as deplore, the Grail quest because of what it means and how it affects things. But I usually enjoy the Grail quest storyline greatly. I do feel like it's a great series overall, and better than the sum of its parts. Each of the individual books, while especially Merlin and Taliesin are very, very strong, the other three books are quite a bit weaker. But the overall whole of the Pendragon Cycle is very strong. It's not my favorite that I've ever read of either Arthurian or series or fantasy or anything like that. But I do feel like it's overall, the series as a whole is very strong. So that is my review of the Pendragon Cycle Book 5, Grail. Thank you guys for watching an Erudite adventure. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you guys again soon. Stay warm.